Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively here in the land of pleasant living, but we do, from time to time, venture south to that other beltway, or even inside of that other beltway, not just for politics and other things, but sometimes we like to talk a little DMV sports with some friends of ours down in Washington. He hails from WTOP, actually hails from my wife's hometown of Bedford, New Hampshire.
Yes.
But you lost the accent. She lost the accent. Always great to visit with Dave Preston, especially on the eve of what he considers a high holy holiday, which is March Madness. This year I'm calling it March Lightness because I don't know how mad it's going to be with no fans. But Dave, you and I have lived through, various things here, Super Bowls, championships, basketball tournaments. We've done all things. But the plague, we're now a year into the plague. It's been about 6 months since I had you on. Last time I had you on, the Redskins were still called that, I think. But how are you? How are you holding up through this college basketball season? Because no one loves this more than you. You are Mr. March Madness in my world.
Yes, and the three things I love about March: one, obviously the tournament and the conference tournaments that we're enjoying this week and everything. Two, Girl Scout cookies come out this month. So
Shamrock Shakes too.
Yes, that's the third. I actually do rankings on the WTOP app, WTOP.com. This year I released my annual rankings. I don't know if you know this, but the Girl Scout cookie organization thing, they have two separate bakeries that supply their cookies. They have two different recipes for Girl Scout s'mores. So naturally, they're in the 8-9 game. You really can't do much else.
As a play-in. S'mores are a play-in.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Lemon Ups, you're in the play-in game.
What'd you do with Do-si-dos? I'm very interested to know where – because Do-si-dos were always my favorite as a kid.
Yeah. Do-si-dos make the Final Four. They're a very physical cookie. Think Georgetown in the mid-'80s. They'll
gritty.
press.
I mean, you get peanut butter. It's grit.
Exactly. If the whistles are active, depending on the refs, you could get into some foul trouble early and often. And that's my concern with do-si-dos.
Samoas? No, nothing?
Samoas are my number 3 seed. They, I think Virginia's extremely, hyper-efficient offense, very deliberate. You can have a cookie, savor it. But can you eat 5 in 5 minutes like you can with a Thin Mint? Can the Samoa keep up in the transition game with the Thin Mint? I don't think so. Thin Mints are my number 2, Nestor, because nobody can run and gun with them. I mean, it's like UNLV in the late 80s. You can just knock down a sleeve, but can they play the half court? Tag-alongs can play half court, can play up tempo.
Never a tag-along guy. They're sort of the savior. You pick them, but they never show up.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what makes the poll fun. That's what makes my rankings amusing, and that's why I get nasty emails at 3 a.m. from people who are really into Girl Scout cookies more than they should.
I think the last time I had you on, we did Moody Blues. We did some James Bond. There's always some. By the way, my wife was in a James Bond marathon thing a couple weekends ago. I walked in 1 minute and Spy Who Loved Me's on. I walk in the next minute, Moonraker's on, but it had some similar characters.
Right.
I apparently got up an hour or two late to have The Man with the Golden Gun, which, of course, is my favorite. I'm a Roger Moore guy. We've lost Sean Connery since the last time we spoke.
Sadly,
so
yes.
I want to give you a little bit of oxygen here. I mean, I saw the Hervé Villachez thing show up a couple of months ago as well. But, I think when all this clears, what I'm trying to do is guys like you and me that know each other through sports, whatever, I'm not coming to a Caps game. I'm not going to see you at some random Maryland Iowa game or something. I think you and I should do a James Bond flick together and discuss and it should be The Man with the Golden Gun, because that's to me, that was the holy grail for me. That's where Scaramanga and Phuket and Hong Kong, all that. That's what lured me into the Bond thing.
Right. Well, I think with Bond too, it's what the generation that we grow up with. Roger Moore was the first Bond I was exposed to, but I got into the Connery films rather quickly. And you
had VHS, right? You're a little younger than me.
Yeah. A little bit younger, yeah.
I'm 52. So where are you on the continuum?
50. So
okay, so VHS came out when you were 8 or 9. I was 11 or 12. Okay, I got you. Okay.
Couldn't watch James Bond movies. They were too racy, even with the the heavily edited for content that eliminated scenes.
You
that
could tape
were
them on
inappropriate.
TBS back in the day when
Yeah.
Turner had it, right?
Right.
And you could watch with commercials in it, right?
Right.
On the VHS.
Oh
or the
yeah,
Beta.
yeah. I mean, I would tape them, and then I would buy I'd buy the video cassettes. I would babysit my brother and sister who were like maybe 7 and 5, and we watched James Bond in an afternoon. Probably not the most enlightening thing for a big brother to do. But you mentioned we lost Sean Connery. We also lost Diana Rigg, who played Tracy Vincenzo in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. We also lost Honor Blackman last year. She played Pussy Galore in Goldfinger. So 2 of perhaps the most iconic Bond girls, and the guy who really set the mold for Bond. Also, Tanya Roberts, who played Stacey Sutton, the last Roger Moore Bond girl from A View to a Kill. She passed earlier this year. So
I had Slim Jim Phantom on the show 6 months ago talking Stratomatic baseball.
Yes.
I Googled him up. He was married to Britt Eklund.
That's awesome. That is
like I think Rod Stewart when I think Britt Eklund. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but I had no idea. He didn't really want to talk about it, but I did say, look, I was just a big fan. I don't be a jerk. But that was like 2 marriages ago. It's ancient history, but
anytime
not for me. Britt Eklund and Maud Adams will never be ancient history for me. Just so you know.
Maud Adams was even better, I think, in Octopussy. When she showed up, 9 years later as the title character in that film. And it was nice to have what kind of mars the latter day, the second half of the Roger Moore films, is that it's obvious that he's in his 50s, and they keep on pairing him with younger women by each movie. Tanya Roberts was his last co-star, and she was easily probably 20, 30 years younger than Sir Roger, whereas Maud Adams at least was somewhat near his age, or you thought, okay, they're kind of in the same generation, so to speak. But she was fantastic in both films.
Dave Preston here with James Bond history. We'll get into the Moody Blues and how much disdain I have for Jethro Tull. We will not listen to Jethro Tull in this segment or any other segment ever. No. There is no time for Jethro Tull. And then when that happens, click, it goes off. By the way, while on music, I do want to say that I heard the Adele James Bond song maybe a week ago, and I thought, man, that's a great James Bond song. You know what I mean? Like it really was. I've heard some Duran Duran. I heard Planet Earth a little while ago, View to a Kill, whatever. But for the modern era, the Adele song is better than the movies have been, especially that one with Halle Berry that I saw.
Yeah, that was, oh gosh, that was a movie with so many possibilities too. It's a shame that they didn't spin Halle Berry's character Jinx off into another movie, because I think she would have been good there. But that movie, WTOP.com, I actually ranked all of the Bond movies. Die Another Day is probably the lowest ranked of my Brosnan films, just because I mentioned in the article, it's just they tried to do so many winks to the 40 years of being the Bond franchise, and it was too ridiculous. It wasn't gritty enough, and but that's my take on Die Another Day. But just like A View to a Kill, a better movie than A View to a Kill deserved a better movie to pair it with. I think the song's fantastic. The movie, not so much. But we want to talk college basketball.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get into college basketball. Absolutely. Dave, for you with the Terps, because that's where we are. I mean, I know you're in D.C. and you get some Virginia and some Georgetown, all of that, right? But for the Terps and for what the last week is represented, and honestly, the whole season, it's just I say it's not madness. It's sort of madness light, without fans. And I've seen you post. I had Ginsburg on a couple weeks ago when he's sailing off into retirement. A few of you have been down there for this. It's all been so weird, and it's been Eddie Feynor-ish for me. It hasn't felt real to me.
It's been very surreal, meaning that you go down there and you're used to the buzz of an arena. You're used to how just you can smell the popcorn being popped. You can feel a little bit of an excitement, and I think that's what a lot of us who cover these games, that's one of the things that we love about it. And we haven't had that the last year. I've covered Nationals games with no fans. I've covered Maryland football games with no fans, and Maryland men's basketball games with no fans. They did have family in the arena this past Sunday, There were a smattering of fans when I went down for national spring training. I think 15% capacity is what they operated at. You had everybody in clusters. There's just something that you lose when you lose the fan. I'm not saying that the fan makes the games, but the fan is definitely part of the seasoning, the Italian seasoning that you put in your omelet, so to speak, that makes it doesn't make the omelet, but it makes it taste just a little bit better. And hopefully we'll be back to normal next year. But I'm just happy that we have games this season, because last year at this time, Nestor, I think I was on with you and we were talking about how excited we were about Maryland winning.
You were one of the last guests I had. Like literally, once the plague started, I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 days, because we were literally this week talking about the tournament, the Big Ten tournament. I remember it.
And last year was a march for the taking for Maryland, meaning they beat Michigan on senior day to win a share of the Big Ten Conference. They had probably their best team, not necessarily talent-wise, but they had probably their best collection of guys that Mark Turgeon had recruited together, guys who came here with a purpose, guys who weren't graduate transfers necessarily.
Yeah, who weren't Suleiman and Diamond Stone.
No, exactly. And so you had guys who really bought into what they were doing. And that's so important in making the whole greater than the sum of its parts. And that has not happened in March, in the history of Mark Turgeon. They had an NIT run way back when with Alex Len, but for the most part, they've either just performed their seat or they've underperformed, and they've flamed out in the Big Ten tournament too. They have not won a game since Barack Obama was president in the Big Ten tournament, and some of their collapses have been absolutely ridiculous. The way that they lost to, I think, Nebraska, who dressed up the mascot as like their 7th man because they were short on bodies. Exactly.
There's been a lot of that. I mean, you talk about Duke getting knocked out. Like how many programs have been, and we didn't see this as much in baseball or football, where the Ravens played a Wednesday afternoon game. Right. Nobody had it worse than the Ravens, and with the Marlins and the Cardinals and all of that. But college basketball, it didn't feel real to me. This Kentucky's and the Dukes, when the Blue Bloods aren't printing the green, college basketball is almost normal.
Well, I mean, the thing, and it's a shame on that level that you have to have the Blue Bloods playing extremely well for the casual fan to be into the NCAA tournament. It's a shame because there's good basketball played out there. These guys who are playing, whether it's Dayton last year or Gonzaga this year, Baylor this year, you still have high quality of play, but without that familiar name on the front of the jersey, the NCAA and CBS, True TV, they're going to lose eyeballs this year. What's a shame about last year was that Maryland was primed to have a memorable March. They looked like they were going to win at least a game or two in the Big Ten tournament, and they have, which they had not done in 4 years. And they looked like they were going to get to the second weekend. Maryland, I'm not saying that they're a program that needs to make the Final Four and win Big Ten championships for the fan base to be happy. But I think realistic expectations, given Maryland's history, given the talent pool that it recruits from naturally within its an hour or two driving distance, they should consistently get to Saturday in the Big Ten tournament. They should consistently get to the second weekend in the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying every year, but I'm saying once every graduating senior who comes through Mark Turgeon's program or whomever's program should say, you know what? I played in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. We played for a shot at the Final Four. Or, you know what? Man, we almost got to the Big Ten championship game. Or we played on that final Sunday before Selection Sunday. That hasn't happened for the most part the last 5 years. And last year, they looked like the team that was going to do it. This year's team, Nestor, they're a smattering of pieces put together, a smattering of co-stars that they don't have the alpha dogs that they did last year. The Anthony Cowan Jr., the Jalen Smith, they don't have that guy. Daryl Morcell is a fantastic supporting piece. He's not a lead player. Aaron Wiggins has played well at times this year. He is yet to grow into that guy that we looked at last year when you knew that Jalen Smith was going to have a great game. You knew that Anthony Cowan was going to take that last shot and get you a huge win over Illinois that you had no business winning, but it winds up going on the correct side of the win-loss column. So they play Michigan State this Thursday in the 11:30 game. I don't know how you feel about those early games, Nestor. in the conference
Well,
tournament.
when you're going to put 20 teams in a conference, this is the way it's going to roll, right? Literally.
Well, I mean, the thing is, too, is like how many times, like there was one year, the first year they had the tournament up here in Washington, D.C., meaning in 2005, Maryland lost in the first round, or I guess whatever that, they were the first team to lose. They lost in the 8-9 game to, I think, Clemson. They finally get the tournament up here and they lose in the first round. UNC plays the next day, and the game was at noon, and it looked like they were sleeping for the first 30 minutes. Roy Williams teams have a way of doing that, but those early afternoon games are just so many teams I've seen playing quicksand, and that's what I'm concerned about Thursday, that Maryland, after 2 straight losses to Northwestern and to Penn State, games that they should have won, they come in Thursday against a primed Michigan State team that's playing their best basketball, that have won 4 of 6. They beat 3 top 5 teams in the last 2 weeks.
And they're probably not feeling good about losing a couple weeks ago either.
Exactly. And that game got a little chippy too. It wasn't, we didn't see a bench clearing brawl, but it kind of got a little nasty a little bit here and there, not to say, no offense to yourself.
No offense taken.
No, but so, I mean, this is the classic, oh my goodness, Michigan State comes in, and if this game gets ugly, a lot of the naysayers around the program are going to be pointing to this as Exhibit A as to why after 10 years, the Mark Turgeon era is not working for them, which I think is unfortunate.
Dave Preston is on the internet, where Mark Turgeon is always under observation and questioning as well. He's Dave Presto. You find him out on Twitter. You find him at WTOP.com, where he mixes a good sense of humor and pop culture in with some basketball and some otherwise pedestrian sports. But the Nationals, you drop spring training in on me. We still play baseball here in Baltimore. It's just not many folks realize we do.
In theory.
Yeah, in theory, right? In theory. And I talk about that on a daily basis. They play real baseball down there, and there's real expectations. Where's D.C. right now? I'm in the back end of Alex Smith and the Washington football team not having a name and making the playoffs, right? And the Capitals and the Wizards feel like they're out in the abyss right now in my world up here in Baltimore. I don't feel it, touch it, see it, watch it, none of that. I mean, I've just given up. But baseball sort of springs eternal, and the Nationals are the great hope there, right?
And I think what also gives people hope about baseball is that with the games being outdoors, they have yet to relax. The Mayor Muriel Bowser has opened Nats Park. She's letting the park open, but no fans as of this time. So I think the other every other ballpark, with the exception of Toronto, and they're not. I don't know exactly their situation, but everyone else, every other home ballpark is going to have some fans, whether it's 5%, 10%, 15%. I think that's what people are looking forward to. They're looking for the chance to go outside again. They're looking for a chance to, when I was at spring training, you had, maybe 1,000 people at these 7,000 seat stadiums, Nestor, and people were sitting in groups. They were in masks. They were doing social distancing, but you know what? They were having nachos. They were having beverages. They were with friends. This one couple I talked to, this was their first vacation since last spring training. These other two couples, one couple had retired down to Florida. These people have known each other for 40 years since they first moved to Alexandria and Bethesda. So you saw what's great about sports is that the reunions, the hanging out with other people and stuff like that. And even though it's in a bubble, so to speak, and people are, you're being socially distanced, I think people are looking forward to that. And I think you can't look really forward, even though the Wizards are playing much better the last couple of weeks. Do you really look forward to it? Because you can't go to the arena. Same with the Caps, who have Stanley Cup hopes under a new coach. I think they're second in the East Division right now. So, I mean, you're excited about the Caps in a way, but
you know what? Hockey's like basketball. It's about the vibe, right? I mean, you
need to be
been
there.
in those rinks, and being in an empty hockey rink's probably the worst of all of them, I think.
I covered the home opener, and it felt like I was at Kettler Iceplex for some, 2 a.m. game because this beer league was able to get ice time. And then, I mean, yes, and they do have canned fan audio that you hear and stuff like that, but the experience from spring training, being able to hear fans, even though there's only 1,000 of them, and which feels like 20, but to hear fans chant that they want Gerardo Parra to come out and even make the trip up to Jupiter, Florida. Hear fans, go crazy when Zim gets up for the first time all spring, for the first time since last spring. And I don't even know if he played I don't know how many spring training games he got into last year, because Zim is usually a guy who takes things very slow in spring training. He usually doesn't get, his first at-bats until maybe March 10th through the 15th. And last year, boom, they were done at that time. So I'm hopeful that we'll have fans at Nats Park. And I think the way that the team is put together, I'm hopeful that they'll bounce back from last year. Key's going to be starting pitching. Nestor, the team ERA was, I think, 26th in the year 2000. Steven Strasburg only pitched 5 innings. Patrick Corbin had a really subpar year. Max Scherzer was not the elite Max that we've known to see in the first 5 years of his tenure. John Lester had his thyroid removed, so he's back. Who knows? He's yet to pitch. Who knows what he does? 5th spot on the rotation is up for 3 guys again. Austin Voth, Eric Fetty, and Joe Ross, who opted out of last year, whose arm is not going to be as strong because he didn't get the work in. So I think people are cautiously optimistic, or maybe optimistically cautious. But what's beautiful about baseball is that there's always a game that you can go to. Even if the team is under 500, you can still go out and have a beautiful day by the ballpark.
Dave Preston here, talking some baseball, some basketball. You can find him down at WTOP and at Dav Presto out on the Twitter thing. And, I hope I get out to a ball game this year. I mean, I think we're all, as you said, antsy for – no, probably not. Oh. No,
Salt Line's a great spot.
The next Elton John or Bruce Springsteen show, when Bruce brings the Letters to You tour to Nats Park, I'm sure I'll get a pit pass or something. But I'm looking forward to concerts, and I've said that my North Star would be a beer on the lawn in Merriweather, Dave. When I can do that, I'm going to feel like things are getting back on the road to normal.
Last summer, I was the Go-Go's are on tour. They were on tour. I have 3 cousins roughly my age. We're all within like a 3 or 4 year span. And so we were going to get tickets last year to see the Go-Go's in July.
Vacation, all you ever wanted.
Actually, Beneath the Blue Sky is my sneaky favorite song by them. It's off their 3rd LP. But there's a group that you wish would have done 1 or 2 more albums that they, before everybody kind of went their own way. Because even though, hey, we all love our Belinda Carlisle, but it would have been cool to have seen where they would have gone for that 4th album. For instance, the Beatles, their 3rd album was A Hard Day's Night. Beyond that, if they only did 3 albums, boom, you don't even get 8 days a week or Help, let alone, their psychedelic stuff. Rolling Stones only do 2 albums. You're not even getting Sticky Fingers or their best work. In my opinion, the Stones' best work went from Let It Bleed to Some Girls, that 69 to 77 era. So I was supposed to go last year, hope to go this year. I think Jim Peterick is coming to Baltimore this fall, I believe. I don't know if he's touring with Ides of March. They had that song Vehicle, but Jim Peterick is also the guy who wrote Eye of the Tiger and Hold On Loosely.
I've had Jim on the show, man. I love Jim Peterick. Big time Chicago guy.
He was in he was in Survivor, and one of the things that I really admire about him is that he could have been demanded to be the front man in that band because he was probably the most talented of the musicians, but he recognized, you know what? I'm going to be the keyboards guy. I'm going to let Frankie Sullivan's a better guitarist than I am. So I'm going to work with what he does really well. And then was it Dave Bickler and Jimmy Jamison? Those guys have freaking voices that just, go off.
And we lost Jimmy Jamison last year.
Sadly, yeah. I never had a chance to see him, with Survivor.
I found my backstage pass. I saw them at Wolf Trap in their prime, and when they were a headliner, I saw them open for REO Speedwagon. I had interviewed Kevin Cronin back in '85 on the Wheels Are Turning tour. And believe it or not, Kevin Cronin, I still have the tape of the interview from 1985, he mentions, yeah, we got Jim Peterick, Survivor, and, Ides of March. Ever heard of them? I'm just a vehicle, baby. There's all of this old school rock and roll stuff. But by the way, you mentioned the Go-Go's just sort of randomly. I have not seen the documentary. I want to see it.
I hear it's good.
Yeah, I do as well. Gina Shock is from Dundalk, and I've never had Gina Shock on the show. And she showed up on something, my wife and I were watching something, and Gina Shock showed up, and she has a distinct East Baltimore accent. My wife's like, oh, my God, it's Baltimore. And I'm like, yeah, Gina Shock. So Mike Brillhart and some other friends, my dear friend Joyce Bucci, they know Gina, and I'm hoping if 2021 goes well, I'll have Gina Shock on the show at some point.
Oh,
right?
dude, that'd be awesome. One Go-Go's aside, Charlotte Caffey wrote the song Turn to You about her boyfriend at the time, Bob Welch, then of the Dodgers, eventually of the A's. So the late Bob Welch. So, there's a guy, Cy Young Award winner, World Series, multiple World Series championships, and the subject to a song by the Go-Go's. So you can't.
I got nothing on the Go-Go's. I mean, I interviewed Belinda Carlisle once, but I got nothing. I have no Go-Go stories.
Gotcha.
Only Bengal story I have is I sat with Susanna Hoff's brother at a Dodger game once in L.A., but other than that, that's all I got.
That's good.
I got nothing.
There's another group that I wish they only did 3 albums. I wish they had done a 4th.
That ballad's the worst song ever.
Eternal Flame. Eternally sucks, yeah.
Oh, that song is terrible, man.
Yeah.
I regret everything about that song. Dave Preston is here. Before we go and talk about regretting things, you said to me when I green roomed you, you're like, did you want to talk about Ian Anderson? No, I don't want to talk about Ian Anderson. I don't ever want to talk about Ian Anderson. And I don't ever want to hear a flute in any other song other than maybe like Stairway to Heaven.
Okay. My Ian Anderson story, and I may have mentioned it before, when we moved to our new studios, WTOP, we moved from near the cathedral to Friendship Heights, just over the border in Maryland. We were still getting our phone system set up, and our arts and entertainment guy, Jason Fraley, was doing a one-on-one interview with Anderson for, I don't know if it was Rock Hall of Fame or whatever the deal was.
He's a nice man. I just don't like the music.
Oh, he was supposed to do a phone interview, and whenever you have a new setup, there are always bugs. And his phone call dropped twice. So we finally get him on the 3rd time on the phone to push him into the studio, and he reads My Buddy the Riot Act. And he's like, this is so ridiculous. This is so unprofessional. I've never been so embarrassed in my life. And I'm like, dude, you wore a derby and a codpiece in concert in public and played a jazz flute. This is the most embarrassed you've ever been?
Good. So we hear that he's not a nice man. Dave Preston is here. Dave Presto. We're going to have some rock stars on. I think Rob Halford from Judas Priest is joining us later on in the month. I'm trying to chase down some of my buddies from the Smithereens and the Bodines and whatnot and just mix up these conversations of Baltimore positivity so that we can get together and have a proper beer at Ram's Head before it's all over with. Dave, enjoy the tournament. Eat wings, all right? Whatever you do. Eat some Old Bay wings to spirit on Maryland, all right?
What is your drumstick to flat ratio preferred, Nestor?
I don't have such a thing. I just love Korean wings. That's all. Okay. If it has if it's got soy and garlic, chances are it's crispy. I love it.
I like 8 to 4 because I prefer the drumsticks, but you still appreciate the drumsticks by having the flats.
If it's chicken, I'll eat it, including Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, and the tasty Western fries that I got to keep I got to get a real green screen here, like you professionals.
I think so.
All right, Dave, it's always good to visit with you. Bond, March Madness, Orioles, Nationals, Ian Anderson. Did we leave anything out? By the way, I've discovered the music of the band. I never listened to the band when I was younger.
Gosh.
I'm gonna rediscover the band a little bit.
That's a good deep dive.
There you go. All right. I've been listening to a lot of Doors lately. So break on through to the other side, maybe March Madness.
One musical note. Have you Rodriguez? Are you familiar with that guy?
Who?
There's this artist called Rodriguez from Detroit. There's a documentary you should check out. It's called Searching for Sugar Man. It's about this guy who he recorded 2 solo albums.
Oh, I remember him. He's like a genius who was homeless, right?
No, I don't know if that was the case, but like in South Africa, he's a god, this guy.
Yeah, he was on 60 Minutes or something, right?
Yeah, and they thought, I don't know, but
I'm mixing up stories. But
there was urban legend that he shot himself or set himself on fire and he's still alive. He's still running. The rumors of his death highly exaggerated.
No, this was a different story then. I got a different guy.
Sugarman, great documentary. Check it out.
Sugarman. By the way, if you haven't seen the Bee Gees doc, you should.
I have. It's fan-freaking-tastic.
Fantastic. There you go. All right. Dave Preston and I doing pop culture, rock and roll, sports, music, James Bond, and college basketball. Always going around the world at WTOP.com and Dave Presto, and always here on WNST, where we never stop talking Baltimore positive and never Jethro Tull.